So, wir kommen zum ersten Big Bang vom heutigen Tag. Wir beginnen mit dem weltbekannten amerikanischen Starblogger Jeff Jarvis. Sein Erweckungserlebnis hatte er 9/11. Er hat das miterlebt und hat an diesem historischen Moment mit seinem Blog angefangen, hat der Welt mitgeteilt, wie er das erlebt hat, was er dazu denkt, zu diesem brutalen Angriff auf das World Trade Center. Und seither kennen wir buzzmachine.com. 2007 folgte dann der nächste Schlag. Jeff Jarvis hat sich einen neuen Dell-Computer gekauft. Und was ist, wenn man was Neues kauft? Man freut sich richtig. Ah, mein neues Ding. Nur das neue Ding, das war eine Zitrone. Das war schrecklich. Alles ging schief, das Service ging schief. Und irgendwann mal hat es ihm so ausgehängt, dann hat er das alles in seinen Blog gestellt. Dell Hell war his story. Und Dell Hell hat wirklich Medien- und Wirtschaftsgeschichte geschrieben. Alle anderen, die auch Zitronen hatten, die auch verrückt und böse waren über das Service von Dell, haben sich eingeschaltet. Eine Riesenwelle ist über Dell hineingebrochen und hat eigentlich der Welt, der Wirtschaft, der Gesellschaft gezeigt, was ist die neue Welt? Das sind nicht mehr die Giganten, sind nicht mehr die Konzerne, die alles in Kontrolle haben, sondern das sind wir, die Consumers. Wir haben die Macht und wir sagen, wie wir es gern hätten. Dell hat dann gesagt, okay, wir begreifen die Botschaft und das hat dann viel ausgelöst. Also, das Internet und die Netzgrößen haben in Jeff Jarvis einen wunderbaren Botschafter gefunden, der uns heute auch zeigen und erklären wird, was eigentlich das Potenzial der digitalen Revolution des Internets und der Giganten wie Google und Facebook sind. Er wird über das Prinzip Teilen und das Prinzip Öffentlichkeit reden, zeigen, dass Scheren eben heißt, Beziehungen aufzubauen, Beziehungen auszuweiten und dass Beziehungen die neue Währung in der heutigen Welt sind. Er hat über all diese Sachen, und ich mache das gerne, Bestseller geschrieben. What would Google do? Haben Sie alle gelesen? Vielleicht schon wieder vergessen. Ich habe auch eins in Deutsch mitgebracht. Wunderbare Bücher. Wer sie nicht kennt, kann sie heute noch mit Gewinn lesen. Ja, Jeff Jarvis fordert uns heute heraus, weil er lacht sich nämlich kaputt über Europa, über unsere Google-Phobie und er lacht sich auch ein bisschen kaputt über unsere Datenschutzbesessenheit in Europa. Versteht das gar nicht. Das ist nicht im Potenzial gedacht, es ist in Abwehr gedacht. So schleudert er uns denn die Überzeugung entgegen, dass dem Internet und seinem Potenzial with an open mind, with generosity and curiosity zu begegnen ist. Jeff, for his example, is sharing even his most private experience with the cancer of prostate. He put that in his blog, telling everything about that, about his experience with that cancer. And what happened? He got a lot of input, he got a lot of help about that problem. And because he was talking about that and blogging about that, everybody else got help from him and that experience and that sharing. I'm very proud and very happy to have you here. Jeff Jarvis, the stage is yours.
Guten Morgen. Ich entschuldige mich für mein Deutsch. Seit Schule gibt es zu viele Jahre, habe ich zu viel vergessen. So leider heute muss ich Englisch sprechen, and I'm very grateful that you all speak English. I'm ashamed that I'm one of those horrible Americans that speaks 1, 1 languages. The 1 is very bad German. I'm delighted to be here. I'm honored to be here, and I want to talk to you about what I have is really the hope for the news industry. We're going to have to go through a lot more change. It's only just begun, but I'm trying to find where I think that the opportunities are. So, I believe that we have to move past the idea of the mass market, of purely selling volume. That's all we could do when we had print. And now on digital, we can do much more. And as I've thought about what the internet really brings us, I argue that it enables us to stop treating everyone the same as a mass and start treating people as individuals and communities. And as a result, I think that we have to rethink of journalism as a service instead of as a content factory. And if journalism is a service, if it helps people accomplish their own goals, then it requires that we know people as individuals and as communities. And that changes fundamentally, I think, the relationship we have with the public, the forms that journalism can take, and the business model opportunities we have. So I'd like to rather quickly go through those three ideas, relationships, forms, and business models, and then I hope we can have a discussion and you can argue with me and tell me where I'm wrong and give me your real challenges in your real businesses. So, the idea of journalism as a service. I think that what we have to do is shift our focus to giving people relevance and value. And the problem for so many years, of course, is that we had to put out one product that had to serve everyone all the same. And on the internet, we have the opportunity now to understand people as individuals and serve them as individuals. We've started a new degree at my school at City University of New York in what we call social journalism, where we teach the students to start with a community, to go talk to the community, to listen and observe the community, and understand what the community's needs are, and then decide what tools of journalism to bring to that community. And it's a different way. It's kind of a reverse way to look at journalism. But again, it's possible now that we can listen to communities. And I think that what we have to do is look potentially at replacing our one big product called the newspaper with many products and many services and many ways to help people. Now, it could be scary. I had the honor of being, thanks to Veit, at the NZZ, was it just yesterday, I think? And someone in the room from the staff said what I hear often, which is, oh my God, this is so much changing. How do we change all this overnight? This huge amount of pressure. And I don't think we have to look at this as a huge change overnight necessarily, more changing everything from the top down. I think we can change from the bottom up. We can change by creating new products. We hear a lot about big data, pamphlet out there talking about big data. And I think that scares us a bit to say, oh my God, we have to get into an entirely different business of big data. But here's my argument. I think we actually have to start with small data. We have to start with those first little points that tell us about our users so we can serve them with greater relevance. Example, I live in New Jersey and the traffic is awful, and I use Waze, the Google traffic app that they bought for $1.3 billion. Now when I get home tonight in Newark in the airport and I put this in my car and I turn on Waze, it will say, are you going home? Google knows where I live. I have no problem with that. Our neighbors to the north in Germany have a lot of problems with that with Google, but I have no problem with that. Google knows where I live and where I work. My local newspaper does not know where I live and where I work. That's shameful. That's ridiculous, right? And if you know where someone lives and where they work, then you can give them greater service. You can give them better local journalism based on their town. You can give them targeted content for about new restaurants where they work and so on and so forth. So forget big data, start with small data. I know some newspapers, both national and regional, that got so good at search engine optimization and social and all these tricks that they ended up getting huge amounts of traffic from outside their markets when they only have in-market ad sales. So I asked them to calculate the difference in the value of an in-market versus an out-of-market user. And in each of three cases, they said it was a matter of 20 to 25 times multiple. So we're chasing page views and unique users that are oftentimes worthless to us because we have the old economics of mass media online. We want reach and frequency. Reach and frequency became unique users and page views. And we wanted more and more and more and more to be bigger and bigger and bigger. But that, it turns out, doesn't work terribly well because we're going to lose at some point to Google in the mass advertising market, and because We have no end of competition, obviously, not only from Google, but from all kinds of other players. And so we know what happens to a commodity when it becomes abundant. The price goes down. And when the price of our advertising goes down, what do? We make it up on volume. And how do we get volume? Cats. Lots of lists of cats, like BuzzFeed. And this drags us down, and I think affects the quality of the journalism and the news and the service that we give. So if we turn around and say, if I can just know one thing about you, what can I do about that? I had this discussion at a major New York financial publishing house, I'll just say that. And I asked them, what's the one data point that would help you serve your users better? And half the room said, if I knew what industry you were in, and half the room said, if I knew your job title. Right? If I know you are in insurance and you're in charge of personnel, clearly they can give that person immensely better service, more relevant content, more relevant advertising, and then they can get greater value back. They can get greater value back because they've given them more relevance, they get more loyalty, and so on and so forth. So I think that we've got to get our volume, our reach, not through reach, but through loyalty. We have to get people back more often. Too often I find that our news sites don't have enough engagement and loyalty. And that's bothersome to our egos, but it's also bothersome to our businesses. Look at the New York Times. When they started the pay meter, they started at 20 pages per month, 20 stories per month. The vast majority of the New York Times audience didn't even come 2 out of 3 days. They had to lower it to 10 pages a month. And this is the New York Times. This is the best we have in the English language. The engagement levels we have are very low because I think we give people too much irrelevance. And I would argue that if you started with that one data point, where do you live? Where do you work? Are you a parent? What industry are you in? What is your job title? That one data point that you can give action to, you can serve people better with that one data point. Then I think you have the opportunity to turn around and get greater value in return. We had an event at my school 2 weeks ago in membership, in rethinking membership, which I think is a huge opportunity. I had the pleasure of going to the NZZ.at in Vienna, and the club came. I'm glad they filled the room because I was there speaking. The idea of a newspaper being a club, I think, is a very important idea. But sometimes we aren't necessarily the member of the newspaper. Sometimes we're a member of a club already. Maybe we're vegetarians, or we're parents, or we're cancer sufferers, or whatever, and we feel an affinity to that. So I think we have to look at a new relationship funnel with our users, our public. Right now they start with being completely anonymous to us. There's someone who comes in and reads so often. If we get that first data point, that first thing we know about you that lets us serve you better, and then we get the second, and then we get the third, and then maybe we start new products around your interests. We start a new product around for vegetarians, or for cancer survivors, or for old people, or for parents. And we've got you in that club and that membership. And then maybe you join this club, you join our club as a result, and then maybe you subscribe and so on and so forth. We have to start to recognize our people as individuals, to keep profiles on them and to serve them better from beginning to end, if that makes any sense. In terms of new relationships that we have with the public, that's the primary one that I care about, is resetting our own relationship with the individuals we serve. But we have other new relationships. We also live in an ecosystem. No longer does one publication have to deliver the entire world. Now, thanks to the link on the web, you can aggregate, you can do what you do best, and link to the rest. The fact that you live in an ecosystem, I think, matters. And we have networks and platforms, which I'll mention more in a moment. So that's a quick look at new relationships that are enabled around the net, the ability to give greater relevance and value. Now for a moment on new forms of journalism. I'm not against the article. We still teach the article. We still teach the inverted pyramid at my journalism school. But the article has been kind of torn apart. I say to students that the background paragraph that we always have in articles doesn't serve anyone very well, because if you know the story, it wastes your time. If you don't know the story, you're not going to understand Syria in 5 lines of type. And I say to the students, what should a background paragraph be now? And they say a link. And I say a link to what? And they say Wikipedia. And so there's an opportunity to create different forms of journalism around the kind of uses. That's thinking like us, though. I've been thinking a lot about mobile, as we all have, because it's taking over our traffic and it's taking over what little advertising there is. And we tend to look at this as another content delivery mechanism. Right? We redo our content in little tiny screens so you can get our content, but we basically send people to a portal and say, good luck finding what you want there. Mark Zuckerberg was interviewed in the New York Times some months ago, and he said that he is tearing apart Facebook's Big Blue app. He pulled out Messenger. He bought WhatsApp and he left it over there. He didn't rename it Face app. He bought Instagram. He left it over there. He didn't rename that Faceagram. And I realized that Facebook and Google operate very similarly. They have an underlying relationship database. They know us as individuals. Right? We don't know our readers as individuals. Facebook and Google know us as individuals. And then they have a bunch of applications on top of that. And when we choose an application, we're telling them what our need is at the moment. Right? So on Google, if I want to communicate, I use Mail. If I want to get somewhere, I use Maps. If I want to search for something, I use Search, and so on. This made me think that we have to cut up news into various use cases. Right? Thinking like a user, rather than saying that all news is imparted through one portal with just a bunch of articles, maybe there are different ways to look at news. Sometimes for news, you want to know what's going on in the whole world right now. I got 3 minutes, give me a sense. And not to plug them again, but the NZZ now has a new thing every day that has, I think, 10 items in it saying this is what's going on today. Very quick and brief. Sometimes you want to follow a story. You want to know what's going on. Tell me the latest with this story. I live La Vida Google. I have a Nexus watch and a Nexus phone. This gives me alerts all the time. The problem with the alerts is that 5 news companies tell me the exact same thing within 2 minutes of each other. The alerts should be set to what I care about, to the stories I want to follow, and should know what I already know and what's new to me, so it's a true alert. Another use case, I have an hour. Engage me, entertain me, inform me. Another use case, I don't really understand this story, get me the background. Another use case, I want to connect with other people in my community to make something happen. And so on and so on and so on. If we rethink the use cases around news, we start to rethink what's possible in the forms that we create. So relationships and forms. Now to the important question, business models. I would argue that we are still an inefficient industry. How many of your publications, you remember that story about the 2-color dress that was this color or that color? How many of your publications had stories about that? That's all? Really? Oh, well, if I ask that question in the US, practically every hand goes up. Everybody has that story. The problem is that we end up rewriting each other, which is terribly wasteful because we all have to have our own story. That goes back to the old days of media when we were a paper product with no links. But now we can link to someone else's story. But instead, we all rewrite everybody's stories. Why do we do that? The business model. Because we're still chasing volume advertising. And the reason we do it is because we all have to have our own take on the story. So we have our own page filled with content. So we have our own ad on it. So we have our own page view. So we get our own pennies. Or as Dr. Burda said, what was it? Nasty pennies? No. Lousy pennies. Thank you. Lousy pennies. Well, that's because we're looking for volume. That's because we just want another page and another page view and another impression. We sell eyeballs by the ton to advertisers. And thus, we end up chasing traffic and chasing content that's cheap oftentimes. And that's inefficient. We have to move past that idea of our business and up the value chain to become more valuable to people, to become unique and valuable. We have to start chasing value instead of just volume. And I think that part of the way we do that, again, is by knowing people so we can give them greater relevance, by serving communities specifically so we can give them greater relevance, so they have greater value from us, they come back to us more often. In the old business model of CPM advertising, if we can get our readers to come back more often and be more loyal, we will make more money with that advertising. But in the long run, I don't think that's the way we're going to save the business. I think we're going to save the business by going to higher volume and then seeing other ways that we have relationships with people to get revenue from them as well. So my friend Veit and I sometimes spar about the notion of paywalls, because I see that in many cases I don't think paywalls work. I don't think paying for content is necessarily a winning business model. I do, however, agree with Veit that there are many ways to get revenue from the public we serve. And I know that things like travel and selling merchandise and commerce, I think even the opportunity of patronage, of people giving us money to help us do our jobs, sounds a little weird.